Few films dared to weaponize normalcy like Taboo 2. Released in 1982, this controversial sequel didn't just push boundaries, it weaponized the American dream itself. Where most adult cinema of the time was dismissed as cheap exploitation, Taboo 2 wrapped its themes in the very aesthetics of middle-class life. For some critics, it was unforgivable. For others, it was a razor-sharp satire of repression, one that's still studied decades later. Today, we're diving deep into the untold legacy of a film that unsettled suburban households, terrified moral crusaders, and unexpectedly turned its star, Honey Wilder, into a feminist icon. Before there was Taboo 2, there was the 1980 original. Directed by Curtis Stevens, the first Taboo sparked an outright moral panic. With its daring focus on forbidden family dynamics, the film terrified critics yet pulled audiences in droves. It wasn't just scandal, it was success. Why? Because it reflected America's deep contradictions. The Reagan era preached family values, but real households were facing cultural upheavals, divorce rates rising, women joining the workforce, and generational clashes over gender roles. Taboo mirrored those anxieties, and when it became a box office hit, a sequel was inevitable. 2 years later, Stevens returned, this time with a larger budget, nearly $300,000, and even bigger ambitions. But this sequel had a secret weapon: writer Helen Terry. Unlike most writers in the adult film industry, Terry approached the material as satire. Her script wasn't about sensationalism, it was a feminist critique of repression. Joyce McBride, the story's central character, wasn't written as an object of desire, she was written as a woman suffocating under suburban expectations. Terry herself once said, "I wrote Joyce as a woman who stops lying to herself. If that makes people uncomfortable, maybe they should ask why." At the center of Taboo 2 is Honey Wilder as Joyce McBride. On the surface, she's the picture-perfect suburban matriarch. But beneath the smiles and clean kitchens lies a woman on the verge of breaking free. Wilder's performance elevates the film. Her subtle expressions, her quiet frustration, and her gradual transformation make Joyce not a seductress, but a tragic hero. Feminist scholars later pointed to her arc as proto-feminist storytelling, where a woman rejects societal lies and begins to assert her own agency. Even in an industry where acting was rarely taken seriously, Wilder brought craft, nuance, and intelligence. Opposite Wilder is Eric Edwards as Greg, her husband. His role is crucial, not as a villain in the traditional sense, but as a product of toxic masculinity. Greg's attempts to control his family echo the patriarchal ideals of the time, where men believed they could fix everything through authority. In Taboo 2, that facade crumbles. The McBride family isn't a happy unit, it's a cage. Their chemistry, both psychological and confrontational, isn't just about intimacy, it's about power. This dynamic gave the film a complexity that set it apart from its peers. One of Stevens' most radical choices was filming Taboo 2 in real neighborhoods: Ventura Boulevard, Balboa Street, middle-class houses with picket fences. This was no coincidence. By setting taboo themes in familiar environments, Stevens made viewers question the reality of suburban life. Could repression and hypocrisy really be hiding behind every polished front yard? The bright kitchens, sunny streets, and smiling families weren't set dressing, they were weapons. The film used the same aesthetics of 1,980 seconds advertising and propaganda, but twisted them into something unsettling. Upon release, Taboo 2 was ripped apart by mainstream critics. Siskel and Ebert dismissed it with 2 thumbs down, labeling it exploitative. Religious organizations called for boycotts, yet the outrage only amplified its notoriety. What many critics failed to see was the underlying commentary. By the early 2010s, feminist scholars began re-examining the film. Dr. Jane Gardner's Porn as Protest essay argued that Joyce McBride's arc represented a housewife's rebellion against suffocating gender roles. Even Vanity Fair revisited the film in 2020, describing it as the Mad Men of adult cinema. 40 years later, Taboo 2 has become a case study in film schools and gender studies programs. Honey Wilder's performance is analyzed not as adult acting, but as a genuine character study. Indie filmmakers like Anna Biller, director of The Love Witch, have cited the film's aesthetics as an influence. Beyond cinema, Taboo 2 remains a cultural artifact of the Reagan era, an era obsessed with morality, yet riddled with contradictions. It asks a haunting question: were audiences really offended by the film, or were they uncomfortable with the mirror it held up to their lives? While Wilder and Stevens get most of the attention, it's worth remembering Helen Terry, the woman who wrote the script. In an industry dominated by men, her voice brought depth and subversion. She infused satire where others saw only shock value. Without her, Joyce McBride might have been another disposable character. Instead, she became a feminist symbol. Terry's contributions remind us that even in marginalized industries, women shape narratives in ways that still resonate today. In the streaming era, Taboo 2 has found a strange second life. Clips circulate in academic discussions, feminist podcasts, and underground screenings. Younger generations, distanced from the 1980 seconds moral panic, view it less as controversial content and more as cultural history. It has been reframed from scandal to study, from trash cinema to critical text. In a way, that's the ultimate victory for Stevens, Wilder, and Terry. Their work endures, not in secrecy, but in open debate. Taboo 2 isn't just a guilty pleasure. It's a film that blurred the line between scandal and satire, repression and rebellion. Honey Wilder's Joyce McBride endures as one of the most fascinating characters of 80-second cinema, a woman caught between duty and awakening. And its suburban backdrop still feels uncomfortably familiar. 40 years later, we're still asking, who was really being exploited, the characters on screen, or the audience's own expectations? What do you think was Taboo 2 misunderstood art, or just exploitation dressed up as satire? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want us to cover Honey Wilder's other iconic performances, or dig into more hidden gems of 80-second cinema, hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us keep uncovering the stories others are too afraid to tell.
Welcome to NVM's interview segment. Today we have the distinct pleasure of talking with Miss Kay Parker, one of the foremost adult film stars of the 80s, whose hit film Taboo has been a national bestseller for the last 2 years. Kay, tell us, why was your film so controversial?
Well, I think first and foremost, the title itself, Taboo, is just something that's just going to grow like a magnet, I think that's human nature. And above and beyond that, it deals with a subject that has been very controversial for a long, long time. In fact, people don't even talk about it. It's so controversial, and that is incest. In the film, I play a wife who is abandoned by her husband for a younger woman, and who, in her desperation and frustration and passion, turns to a young, handsome, and she seduces him. And so I think the film itself appeals to, that sense that's within all of us that wonders about things like that are, from my way of thinking, very common occurrence in everyday life. And certainly the emotion of the situation was very real to me, even though I'm not a mother, but I had great empathy for the character, and I could see how a situation like that might evolve. So, so I think that's partly due to, I think the interest in the film is partly due to all of that, and I take some of the credit.
Oh, you should, as well. You should. Have you noticed a definite trend towards quality adult films in the last few years?
Most definitely, yeah. And I think that's because of the expansion in video. The market is rapidly expanding, and we find that we have more and more viewers, more diversified kinds of viewers, particularly women. Women constitute a very large percentage of the home viewing audience at this point. That's nice because couples watch adult films anymore, which wasn't always that way. Before the video market, we were dealing with theaters and the raincoat brigade. So it's kind of nice. I feel very good in that it's expanding. And because of that, I think women, for the most part, want plots. They want to see the characters. I don't always feel that men want to see that so much, and maybe they do. But so I think because of that, because of the female influence now, that we are getting better quality films.